It's late. The cursor on your screen blinks like a heartbeat that won't slow down. Emails still unopened. Dishes still in the sink. A text you've been avoiding for 3 days. You tell yourself you'll get to it tomorrow, when you're more rested, when the timing feels right, when your mind is clear. But deep down, you know it's not the timing that's the problem. It's the weight in your chest when you even think about facing it. So you scroll, you snack, you say, I'll deal with it later. And every time you do, a little piece of you whispers, we've been here before. Because growth never hides in comfort. It waits in the things you'd rather delay. The conversation you don't want to have. The truth you don't want to have to face. The dream you don't want to admit you're afraid of. And the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. Not because the problem grows, but because you do. You start to see what avoidance costs. Not just in missed deadlines or strained relationships, but in the quiet erosion of your own integrity. We live in a world addicted to shortcuts. We want healing without hurting, success without sacrifice, peace without confrontation. But the real work, the work that changes you, always begins the same way, by turning toward the thing rather than run from it. So, if you've been feeling stuck, tired of pretending, tired of waiting for someday to finally arrive, if you've started to wonder whether growth has to hurt this much, if that sounds like you, this is the episode for you.
Welcome to the Kyle Mackie Podcast, your weekly dose of clarity, energy, and inspiration. Kyle unpacks lessons from the world's top minds so we can all grow together. Grab your coffee, lock in, and let's make it happen.
Welcome back, my friends. I'm Kyle Mackie, and this is The Road Through Pain. If you're here, chances are you've already rocked through enough to know this much. Life never gives you an easy path. Maybe you've hit a wall, not the kind you can see, but the kind that makes everything heavy. Work feels mechanical. Relationships feel like maintenance. Your own dreams sit somewhere in a notebook you stopped opening months ago. You tell yourself you're just tired, burned out, waiting for things to calm down. But deep down, there's a quiet voice whispering the truth. You're not tired from doing too much. You're tired from avoiding what matters most. That's the heart of what this episode is about. The unseen costs of avoidance. The hidden discipline that turns pain into power. When Scott Peck opened The Road Less Traveled in 1978 with 3 simple words, life is difficult, it wasn't meant to discourage us. It was meant to wake us up. He wrote that line not as a cynic, but as a healer, a psychiatrist who spent years watching people suffer, not because their lives were hard, but because they expected them not to be. We live in a culture that promises ease. Happiness is marketed as a right, not a practice. We're told that if we feel pain, something must be wrong. And if something's wrong, we should fix it fast. But Peck flips that logic on its head. He says, pain isn't the enemy, it's the invitation. Every problem we face, every discomfort we run from, is a door to our own maturity. And the discipline to walk through that door, willingly, consciously, is what he calls the road less traveled. That phrase sounds poetic, but in reality, it's brutal. It's the road of growth over comfort, truth over denial, responsibility over blame. It's the road where we stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? It's not glamorous. It's not easy, but it's where real peace begins. Not the peace of a problem-free life, but the peace of knowing that no matter what happens, you can meet it head on. Peck believed there are 4 essential tools for this kind of growth, 4 disciplines that make life bearable, even beautiful. There's delaying gratification, doing the hard thing now so you can experience deeper joy later. Accepting responsibility, realizing that no one is coming to rescue you. Dedication to truth, having the courage to see reality as it is, not as you wish it were. And then balancing, the art of holding contradictions without losing your center. These aren't abstract ideas. These are psychological weapons. The only tools we have to confront pain honestly and transform it into growth. And they all start with the first one, delaying gratification. The willingness to suffer now for the sake of something better later. But before we get there, we need to understand why this is so hard, why we avoid pain even when we know it's the way forward, why when faced with discomfort, most of us reach for distraction instead of discipline. It's not because we're weak, it's because we were never taught how to suffer well. From the time we were young, we were told that pain meant failure, that discomfort meant danger, that we should always look for the path of least resistance. But the path of least resistance is the path of least growth. Peck's genius was showing us that the very thing we avoid, suffering, is actually the birthplace of wisdom, strength, and peace. He called it legitimate suffering, the kind that comes from facing reality rather than escaping it. He believed that neurosis, those endless loops of anxiety, procrastination, and self-sabotage are just substitutes for that legitimate pain. We avoid the small suffering of growth and end up trapped in the larger suffering of stagnation. This episode isn't about pushing through the pain or glorifying struggle. It's about learning how to meet pain with purpose, to see it not as punishment, but as participation. Your mind, body, spirit, trying to realign you with what's true. By the end of this journey, you'll understand that discipline really is not a punishment, not a set of rules, but a form of love. Because as Peck teaches, discipline is love in action. It's how we care for our future self, how we honor the people we love, and how we build a life that can hold meaning even when it hurts. So here's the promise of this episode. By the time we're done, you'll see that the pain you've been avoiding isn't your enemy. It's your guide. You'll see why the life you want is waiting on the other side of discomfort. And you'll walk away with the tools to finally face what you've been avoiding. Not with force, but with courage. Because the truth is, every transformation begins the same way, with one small decision to stop running. And that's where we begin, with the first tool of discipline, delaying gratification. The art of doing the hard thing first, so you can finally be free. So maybe the question isn't how to avoid pain, but how to walk with it. Now, there's a line in The Road Less Traveled that hit like a truth you've known your whole life, but never had the word for. Life is difficult. Scott doesn't write it like a warning. He writes it like a doorway. Because once you accept that life is difficult, it stops being personal. You stop thinking, why me? and start asking, why not me? That shift changes everything because pain isn't what breaks us, resistance is. The longer we run from pain, the heavier it becomes. Avoidance is interest charged on emotional debt, and sooner or later, the bill comes due. For most of us, the real war isn't out there. It's in here. Between the part of us that knows what we're capable of and the part that just wants things to stay comfortable. That's the road less traveled. Not because it's hidden, but because it's hard. It's the road of delayed gratification, the road of responsibility, the road where you stop blaming the world and finally start building yourself. When I first read that line, life is difficult, I remembered thinking, yeah, no kidding. But it didn't really land until I was 23 and standing at the edge of a financial disaster I'd created. I'd started a business to help people, but I didn't know what I was doing. I ended up $53,000 in debt, flat broke, overworked, and terrified. It wasn't just the debt, it was the shame, the fear of what people would think. And the easy option was right there. Go bankrupt, start over, escape the pain. But deep down, I knew that if I took that route, I'd build the same habits again, just with a cleaner slate. So instead, I chose the road through pain. I took a job in a remote camp up in Alberta. 16 months of long days, isolation, and grind. Every paycheck went straight to the debt. Every night, I reminded myself why I was doing it. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my self-respect. And I'll never forget the day I made the last payment. There wasn't a parade, no one clapped, but standing there, debt-free, exhausted, I realized something. Freedom isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to choose it for the right reasons. That's what Peck meant by discipline. Discipline isn't control, it's love made visible. It's how you prove to yourself that your future is worth suffering for. Delaying gratification isn't about denial, it's about direction. It's saying, I'll carry this weight now so my future self doesn't have to. And that kind of love, real love, is rarely comfortable. Over the years, I've seen the same pattern show up everywhere. In business, in relationships, in personal growth. It's easy to do things that depend only on you. The morning routines, the workouts, the ice bath, the long runs. Those things hurt. But the pain is clean. You control it. The harder part, the real discipline, is the things that depend on other people. Leading a team, navigating conflict, keeping your heart open when it would be easier to pull away. Because those are the moments when your ego gets tested. When discipline stops being a system and starts being a choice. That's where most of us crack. Not because we're lazy, but because growth asks for something deeper than productivity. It asks for humility. To say, maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe I need to change first. That's the discipline of responsibility, the second tool Peck talks about. The moment you start saying, this is happening to me, and start saying, this is mine to solve, it doesn't mean it's your fault. It means it's your fight. I've learned that lesson more than once. Even when my business started to succeed, when the numbers looked good, the clients were happy, the world saw success, there was this quiet truth underneath. I wasn't lit up anymore. The business worked, but didn't work on me anymore. And that's the danger of comfort. It masquerades as peace when really it's just safe stagnation. For months, I kept pushing off what I knew I needed to do next. Launch this podcast, build something that actually mattered to me, create a new lane, the Sales Evolution Lab. But every time I got close, fear would whisper, what if it fails? what if this time people don't care? So I waited. And the longer I waited, the heavier the guilt got. Because deep down, I knew I was choosing comfort over calling. That's the thing about avoidance. It doesn't just steal time, it steals aliveness. And the only cure is action. Not reckless action, but honest action. The kind that says, I'm scared, but I'm doing it anyway. So I did. And the moment I decided to face it, to start creating again, to launch this, to risk failing, something shifted. Not in the world, but in me. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to keep lying to yourself. That's the discipline of truth, Peck's third tool. Seeing things as they are, not as you wish they were. It's the most painful, liberating practice you'll ever learn. Because every lie we tell ourselves is another wall between us and freedom. Facing truth means looking at your habits, your patterns, your stories, and saying, yeah, this hurts, but it's real. And real is where healing starts. The last tool Peck talks about is balancing. Learning how to hold tension without collapsing under it. Because growth isn't linear. Some days you're on fire. Some days you can't find a spark. And that's okay. Because falling off doesn't make you weak. Staying down does. I've had seasons where my discipline cracked completely, where I'd go from peak routine to total chaos. Morning routines, ice baths, journaling, all gone. And every time I'd start judging myself for it until I realized even discipline needs grace. The goal isn't to never fall. It's to shorten the time between falling and standing back up. That's the road less traveled. Not the road of constant strength, the road of constant return. When you put all this together, delaying gratification, accepting responsibility, delaying dedication to truth, and balancing the contradictions of being human, you realize something simple and profound. Discipline isn't a prison. It's the pathway to peace. Because when you stop avoiding pain, you stop living in fear of it. And when you stop fearing pain, you start living freely. I think that's what Peck was really trying to teach. Not that life is suffering, but that suffering can be sacred if you face it with intention. Every problem becomes a teacher. Every struggle becomes a forge. And every time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you build something no one can give you: inner strength. So yeah, life is difficult, but it's supposed to be, because difficulty is the door to meaning. And the road less traveled, the one through pain, is the only road that leads you home. Once you understand that difficulty isn't the enemy, the next question becomes, what do you do with it? Because knowing that life is hard doesn't make it any easier to face the parts you keep avoiding. Growth starts small. In that moment when comfort calls and you choose to wait, when every impulse says, ease the tension now, and you decide to hold steady instead, that's where discipline begins. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices. The choice to trade the comfort of now for the strength of later. It's what Peck called the first discipline of life: delaying gratification. There's a certain kind of pain that shows up quietly. The pain of the thing you keep putting off. The gym you meant to go back to. The conversation you swore you'd have. The project that lives rent-free in your head, but never on paper. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment, but deep down, you know, you're not waiting for that moment. You're waiting for the feeling, that sudden spark of motivation, that perfect alignment of energy and clarity that makes the hard things feel easy. But here's the truth, that feeling never comes. And the people who build extraordinary lives aren't the ones who feel ready. They're the ones who've learned to start before they do. That's the essence of delayed gratification. It's not about suffering. It's about sequence. It's about flipping the order from pleasure now, pain later, to pain now, peace later. Scott illustrates it with a simple story. One of those stories that almost are too ordinary to be profound. He tells of a woman who came to him for therapy, a bright, capable, 30-year-old financial analyst who couldn't stop procrastinating at work. She was frustrated. Her career was stalling. Months of therapy weren't changing anything. Until one day, Peck asked her something completely out of left field. When you eat a piece of cake, how do you eat it? She looked confused. Then she laughed and said, I ate the frosting first. And in that moment, everything clicked. She had built her entire life around that habit, taking the sweet parts first and the hard parts later. She'd start her day with the tasks she liked and spent the rest of the day dreading what she avoided. She didn't have a time management problem. She had a sequence problem. So Peck challenged her to flip it, to eat the cake first, to tackle the most unpleasant, uncomfortable tasks in her first hour of the day. And then, only after that, move to what she enjoyed. Within weeks, her life changed. Not because the work got easier, but because her relationship with discomfort did. That's the real lesson here. Delaying gratification isn't about self-denial. It's about self-respect. It's saying to yourself, I'm strong enough to handle what's hard because I care enough about what comes after. We live in a culture that rewards the opposite: instant dopamine, quick hits, easy wins. But the truth is, the more you feed on instant gratification, the hungrier you get for it. It's a loop, a psychological fast food that keeps you full of nothing. Real fulfillment is slow cooked. It's built in silent repetition and small choices that nobody sees. It's the quiet satisfaction that comes at the end of the day when you know you didn't run, when you faced the hard thing and handled it. I've had to relearn that lesson over and over. When I was deep in debt, there were so many nights I wanted to escape, buy something, drink something, do anything to feel in control again. But the few times I gave in, it didn't help. It never does. Because every time you trade long-term peace for short-term relief, you reinforce the belief that you can't handle discomfort, that you have to escape it. When I finally flipped it, when I started working through the pain first, showing up even when it was hard, the whole shape of my life changed. Not because I suddenly became fearless, but because I stopped treating fear as a stop sign. The irony is, every form of gratification you delay becomes deeper when you finally get there. The joy lasts longer because it was earned. The pleasure feels cleaner because it wasn't stolen from your future self. That's what makes delaying gratification such a spiritual act. It's not just about willpower. It's about trust. Trusting that who you're becoming is worth the wait. Trusting that the reward will come, not now, but later. And that you'll be there to receive it because you didn't give up halfway. Peck says the ability to delay gratification is the single most important skill of maturity. It's what separates the child from the adult. Not age, not education, not success. Children live in the now. Adults learn to live in alignment with what's next. And that doesn't mean you stop enjoying the moment. It means you stop sacrificing tomorrow for it. So, if you're listening right now and you've been procrastinating on the business idea, the tough conversation, the change you know you need to make, here's what I want you to ask yourself. What's the frosting I keep eating first? What part of your life are you indulging in now to avoid the hard part that actually matters? And what would happen if just for this week you flipped it? Imagine starting every morning with one task that makes your stomach drop. Not the inbox, not the scroll, not the easy win, the hard thing. The one that moves the needle. Even if nobody else sees it, that's how you eat the cake first. That's how you retrain your brain to see pain as progress. Because every time you delay gratification, you're casting a vote for your future self. You're saying, I believe I'll be here tomorrow and I'll be stronger for the choice I'm making today. It's a simple equation. Pain first, peace later. And if you can live with that order, if you can make it your daily rhythm, your life will start to feel lighter, not heavier. Not because the challenges disappear, but because they finally have meaning. So, for the next 7 days, start your morning with the cake flip. Before you check your phone or open your inbox, ask, what's the hardest thing I could do right now that would make everything else easier later? Do that first. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it only takes 15 minutes, the rest of your day will feel different. Not because it's easy, but because you've already proved you can handle hard. Now, take a breath and be honest with yourself as you think about this. When was the last time you delayed gratification and felt proud instead of deprived? What did that moment teach you about what you're really capable of? Because in the end, delaying gratification isn't about waiting. It's about building. You're not postponing joy, you're maturing it. You're shaping yourself into someone who can hold peace without needing everything to be perfect. That's the discipline of growth. And when you master that, pain stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like proof. But facing discomfort is only half the story. Because once you've stopped running from the pain, you start to see something deeper. Some of that pain was never random. It was created by you. And that's where the next layer of discipline begins. The moment you stop blaming and start building. The next tool is accepting responsibility. Now, there's a moment every human being faces. That crossroad between blaming and building. Between saying, this is happening to me and this is mine to solve. And it's in that moment, more than any other, where your life either expands or contracts. Scott Peck calls it the acceptance of responsibility. And he says it's the single line dividing mental health from dysfunction. Because the moment you start saying, this is my problem, you start to take your power back. Most people don't realize how deeply this pattern runs. You can see it everywhere. The worker who blames their boss, the partner who blames their ex, the adult who blames their parents. It's not that their pain isn't real. It's that they've mistaken accountability for punishment. Responsibility isn't about fault. It's about freedom. You don't take responsibility to feel guilty. You take it to feel capable. Because if you made it, you can change it. If it's yours, you can move it. Peck shares a story from his time as an army psychiatrist in Okinawa. A sergeant came in, drunk and defensive. His superiors had sent him for help. He slammed his hand on the desk and said, "There's nothing else to do on this damn island except drink." But Peck challenged him. "What about reading?" "No good. The barracks are too noisy." "What about fishing?" "Can't. I work during the day." Every suggestion, an excuse. Every opportunity, a wall. But then, Peck said, "There's night fishing." The sergeant had hesitated, then admitted, "I just don't like fishing." And in that moment, the truth was laid bare. It wasn't the island's fault. It was his choice. He didn't want to stop drinking. He just didn't want to face himself. We all do this in some form. We tell ourselves stories that make avoidance look noble. I can't focus until things calm down. I can't change until I have support. I can't say no. They need me. But here's the truth. You can't heal a problem you're still blaming on someone else. The sergeant's story ends sadly. He never changed. His career fell apart. But Peck contrasts him with another person, a young woman in the same area who also felt stuck, lonely, and helpless. When he asked her why she didn't make friends, she said, "I can't. My husband takes the car." He told her, "Drive him to work." She said, "I can't drive stick." Then she glared and said, "On these roads, you must be crazy." That's the thing about responsibility. It's always waiting behind the word can't. Usually can't just means won't. And won't is the space between who we are and who we could become. I've lived that space. When I was staring down $53,000 in debt, I had every excuse lined up. I could have gone bankrupt, a clean slate, quick relief, easy out. But I knew that if I did, I'd be teaching myself the wrong lesson. That escape was easier than ownership. So I did the opposite. I took full responsibility, not just for the debt, but for my decisions. It wasn't fun, it wasn't easy, but it was mine. And the strange thing about accepting responsibility is that the moment you stop fighting it, the pain starts to lose its power over you. When I stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, what can I do about it? I felt stronger, not smaller. That's what responsibility really does. It restores dignity. The truth is, blame feels good in the short term. It lets you avoid the mirror. But responsibility gives you something blame never will: control over your own story. Because the moment you say, "This is mine to fix," you've already changed the ending. I see this all the time in leadership. People love the idea of success, but they hate the price tag: ownership. When things go right, they want all the credit. When things go wrong, they want cover. But the people who grow, who actually evolve, are the ones who stop outsourcing their problems. They stop waiting for the company to change or the partner to understand or the world to cooperate. They realize that power doesn't come from control. It comes from ownership. You can't control everything, but you can always control how you show up. There's another line from Peck that hits like a gut punch. We cannot solve life's problems except by solving them. It sounds obvious until you realize how much of your life you spent trying to go around problems instead of through them. The truth is, avoidance is a solution. It just doesn't work. You can't heal what you won't face. And you can't face what you still think isn't your job to fix. That's what this discipline is really about. Taking radical ownership of your life, even when it's unfair, even when you didn't cause it, Because responsibility isn't about blame. It's about becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with more, who can't become powerful until you can be responsible for your own pain. Now let's bring this down from philosophy to practice, because all transformation needs traction. Here's what I want you to try this week. When something goes wrong, before you react, pause and ask yourself one question. What part of this is mine to own? Even if it's only 10%, own that 10%. Because the moment you do, you reclaim the power to change it. You don't have to like it. You just have to lead it. Do that once a day, and you'll start to feel your mind shift from blaming to building, from reaction to response. And that's how real maturity begins. Now, take a moment, slow down, and think about this next one. When's the last time you stopped blaming someone else and started fixing something yourself? What did that moment teach you about who you really are when things get hard? Because here's the truth. Responsibility doesn't shrink you. It expands you. It's the moment you stop waiting for rescue and start realizing you were the rescue all along. Now, responsibility gives you power, but power without truth is dangerous. Because if you're owning the wrong story, you're just carrying someone else's lie with more confidence. That's why Peck's third discipline cuts even deeper. The dedication to truth. The practice of seeing your life exactly as it is, not as you wish it were. Now, there's a quiet kind of pain that comes before every breakthrough. The pain of finally telling yourself the truth. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in the middle of an ordinary day when you finally admit what you've known for months, maybe years, but didn't want to face. That the job you worked so hard to build isn't feeding your soul anymore. That the relationship you've been defending is already gone. That the version of you the world sees isn't the one who looks back in the mirror. Scott called this dedication to truth. And he said, it's one of the most demanding forms of love because truth doesn't arrive to make you comfortable. It arrives to make you whole. Most people think of honesty as a moral issue. Good people tell the truth. Bad people lie. But Peck saw it differently. He saw truth as a path, the only one that leads to real peace. He wrote that mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs. At all costs. That means even when the truth costs you your pride, even when it costs you your comfort, even when it costs you an identity you've outgrown, because there's no growth in pretending. There was a time in my own life when that hit hard. The business was running smoothly, money was coming in, the surface looked great, but something in me knew the truth. I wasn't happy. I was producing results, but starving for meaning. For months, I kept trying to talk myself out of that truth. Maybe I just need a vacation. Maybe I'm just tired. But deep down, I knew the real reason. I'd built a version of success that didn't fit anymore. And admitting that was brutal because it meant starting again. It meant risking stability for alignment. But once I stopped lying to myself, everything changed. Clarity replaced confusion. Energy came back. I didn't suddenly have all the answers, but I finally had honesty. That's what truth does. It doesn't always fix things. It just puts you back in the driver's seat. Peck used to say that our map of reality are never permanent. They're meant to evolve. But most people don't want to redraw the map. We'd rather cling to the old one, even when it leads us in circles, because updating it means admitting we were wrong. That's why people stay in unhappy jobs, unfulfilling relationships, or destructive habits, not because they love suffering, but because they fear the disorientation of truth. To revise your map, you have to let the old one die. You have to accept that your old beliefs, old stories, old self-image, they served you once, but they can't take you where you're going next. That's why dedication to truth is so radical. It demands humility. It asks you to trade certainty for curiosity, pride for presence. It asks you to say, maybe I don't know who I am anymore, but I'm willing to find out. One of Peck's patients, a brilliant computer technician, came to him desperate to save his marriage. He couldn't trust authority. Not his boss, not the police, not even Peck himself. He'd built a belief system where everyone with power was out to betray him. When Peck tried to help, he projected that same distrust onto him, setting impossible conditions for therapy, refusing to commit. In the end, the man quit, saying, "You're just like all the others." That's the tragedy of refusing truth. We create the very pain we're running from. The technician's map, the belief that authority couldn't be trusted, may have protected him once, but now it was destroying him. And he couldn't see it, because changing that belief meant rewriting his story, facing the truth that his parents hadn't failed him. For him, the lie was safer. We all have those lies, the ones that keep us functioning but small, the ones that let us sleep at night but keep us from waking up. I'm fine. I don't care. This is just how life is. Every time we say them, we trade a little bit of reality for comfort. But every lie we tell ourselves eventually becomes a wall between us and the life we're meant to live. Truth is always uncomfortable at first. It shakes foundations, challenges identities, and dismantles illusions. But once the dust settles, it leaves behind something rare: peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having everything under control, but the peace that comes from finally aligning your inner and outer worlds. That's why Peck said truth and love are inseparable. Because to love yourself, or anyone, you have to be willing to see clearly. Love without truth is just an illusion dressed up as comfort. And truth without love is just cruelty disguised as honesty. The balance of both, that's maturity. I think about that a lot, especially now doing this podcast. Every episode is an exercise in truth telling. To speak about growth, I have to be growing. To talk about discipline, I have to live it. And that means facing myself daily, catching the small lies before they calcify into beliefs. It's humbling, but it's also freeing. Because when you stop running from truth, you stop needing control. You stop pretending. And what's left, even if it's raw, is real. So let's bring this down to the ground. Let's make it something you can live, not just understand. So, once a day, pick one part of your life, your work, your relationships, your habits, and ask, what's something true here that I've been avoiding? You don't have to act on it yet. Just write it down. No judgment, no excuses, because awareness comes before change. And honesty is the first step to freedom. The goal isn't to fix everything. It's to stop lying about what needs fixing. Now, slow down and let this next question land somewhere deeper. What's one truth you already know, but haven't had the courage to say out loud? And what might your life look like if you finally stopped avoiding it? Because in the end, Truth doesn't destroy you. It destroys what was never real. It strips away the false layers so that real you can breathe again. And when you commit to truth, not as a concept, but as a lifestyle, you stop chasing peace and start embodying it. That's dedication to truth. Not cold honesty, but loving clarity. The kind that says, I'd rather be real than right. But once you start living in truth, another challenge emerges. How do you stay open when life keeps pulling you in opposite directions? That's where the final discipline comes in. The art of balance. Not control, not perfection, just learning to stay centered while the world keeps moving. Truth clears the fog. But once you can finally see, the next challenge is staying steady inside what you see. There's a quiet art that most people never master. It's not the art of pushing harder or grinding longer. It's the art of balancing, of standing steady between contradictions that never fully resolve. Scott calls it the fourth discipline of life, and maybe the most mature of them all. He writes that mental health isn't about eliminating tension. It's about learning to live with it, to stay centered while life pulls at you from every direction. Because life will pull at you between work and rest, love and independence, control and surrender, self-care and sacrifice. And if you don't learn how to balance those opposites, you spend your whole life swinging between extremes, burning out, breaking down, and wondering why peace never lasts. Peck tells the story of a young mother who came to him in crisis. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, drowning in guilt. Every time she focused on her children, she felt guilty for neglecting herself. Every time she took a break for herself, she felt selfish for not being there for them. She wanted an answer, a formula, but Peck didn't give her one. He said the trick isn't to choose between self-love and sacrifice. It's to learn how to keep both alive at the same time. That's balancing. It's the ability to hold paradox without letting it tear you apart. We live in a world obsessed with absolutes. Everything is either hustle or rest, self-love or service, ambition or peace. But life isn't binary. It's a blend. Balancing is the skill of walking the tightrope between those poles, one conscious step at a time. It's not about finding permanent balance. It's about becoming the kind of person who can rebalance. And that, Peck says, requires flexibility, the ability to constantly adapt your map of reality as life changes around you. The people who stay rigid, who insist on certainty, who need to be right, they break. But the ones who bend, who stay curious, who can say, maybe I was wrong, they grow. I've had to learn that the hard way. For years, I thought discipline meant control, tight schedules, early mornings, perfect routines. And it worked until it didn't. There were seasons when I was on fire, executing flawlessly, doing everything right. And then there were seasons where that same discipline turned into self-punishment. If I missed a workout, skipped a meditation, or fell behind on content, I'd spiral into guilt. It took me years to realize that real discipline isn't about rigidity. It's about rhythm. It's not about doing everything all the time. It's about knowing when to push and when to pause. There's a kind of wisdom that comes from learning to trust both, because there's strength in the push, but there's guidance in the pause. Peck believed that balancing is how we grow in consciousness, that maturity is measured by how many opposing truths we can hold without breaking. He wrote, "The essence of life is to find balance within the complex and often contradictory demands of existence." That means saying yes to structure and spontaneity. It means showing up strong in your purpose while staying soft enough to listen. It means caring deeply without carrying everything. And most of all, it means understanding that peace isn't the absence of motion. It's the harmony between motion and meaning. If you zoom out, you can see this principle in everything. The seasons, the human body, even music. Every beat, every rhythm depends on contrast, sound and silence, action and rest. Without both, there's no movement, no life. So when you feel stretched between competing parts of yourself, the achiever and the dreamer, the giver and the protector, you're not doing it wrong. You're just living the tension that makes you human. There was a moment recently that drove this home for me. I was working nonstop, building this podcast, planning the Sales Evolution Lab launch, managing the marketing business. On paper, I was killing it. But one night, I caught myself staring at the screen at 2 a.m. Exhausted, foggy, empty, and it hit me. I wasn't chasing excellence anymore. I was avoiding stillness. Because stillness meant space, and space meant hearing the truth. I'd been too busy to face that I was scared to slow down. So I did something I rarely did back then. I stopped. I turned off the laptop, sat in silence, and just let myself feel the discomfort. No music, no phone, no noise. And the next morning, I woke up clearer than I had in months. That's what balance does. It doesn't erase the chaos. It just puts you back in rhythm with it. The paradox of balance is this. It isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice every day. The small, invisible choices that keep you centered while the world keeps spinning. Every yes hides a quiet no. Every push demands a pause. Every boundary protects something sacred. So if you're feeling stretched, pulled, or worn thin, it doesn't mean you're failing. It might just mean life is asking you to adjust your rhythm. So, once a day, when you catch yourself swinging to an extreme, overworking, overthinking, overcommitting, stop and ask yourself, what am I neglecting right now that actually matters? Then make one small correction. Step away from the screen, take a walk, send the message you've been avoiding, say no if you need to. Don't aim for perfect balance. Aim for constant recalibration. Because peace doesn't live in stillness. It lives in the swing. Now, slow down for a second and let this next question land somewhere deeper than your mind. What part of your life has been quietly asking for balance? And what's the real cost of ignoring it? Sometimes balance isn't found by gripping harder. It's found in the moment you finally loosen your hold. By now, you've walked through all 4 disciplines. You've faced discomfort, owned your story, told yourself the truth, and learned to stay steady in the storm. But there's a moment after all that learning when the lessons stop being theory and start becoming you. That's the bridge. The space between knowing and becoming. And it's where everything starts to change. And when those 4 lessons start to weave together, that's when discipline stops being something you practice and starts being something you are. So, you've walked through pain. You've learned to stop running from it, to face it with discipline. You've taken responsibility not because you had to, because you chose to. You've told yourself the truth, even when it stripped away your comfort. And you've learned to stay steady in the space between opposites, to bend without breaking. That's not theory anymore. That's transformation. Because transformation doesn't happen in the reading or the planning. It happens in the returning. Every time you face discomfort instead of escaping it, every time you say, this is mine to fix, every time you choose honesty over illusion or rest over control, that's you becoming new. For a long time, I thought growth was about adding habits, skills, systems, success. But the deeper I went, the more I realized growth is subtraction. It's about unlearning the patterns that keep you small. The need for ease, the instinct to blame, the habit of pretending, the fear of slowing down. Every one of those dissolves a little more each time you practice the 4 disciplines. Because pain teaches patience, responsibility builds strength, truth clears confusion, and balance keeps it all human. When those 4 start working together, something shifts quietly inside you. You stop fighting life and start walking with it. There's a kind of peace that only comes from alignment, not from everything going right, but from knowing you're showing up right, even when things go wrong. It's a steadiness that doesn't depend on outcomes anymore. You don't need the world to cooperate for you to be okay. That's what this whole journey has been about. Not control, not perfection, but partnership with your own evolution. Peck says, the truly mature person is one who can live with reality exactly as it is, without needing to distort it. That doesn't mean resignation. It means reverence. It means finally accepting that life isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be meaningful. And meaning is never found in comfort. It's forged in challenge. Every time you face pain with discipline, take responsibility for your choices, speak the truth to yourself, and stay balanced through contradiction, you're creating meaning. You're proving that life's difficult. That life's difficulty isn't a cure, isn't a curse. It's a curriculum. I think back to that kid version of me, working in that remote camp, chipping away at $53,000 of debt. Back then, I thought freedom meant never struggling again. But now I see it differently. Freedom isn't the absence of struggle. It's the confidence that you can walk through struggle without losing yourself. That's what the road less traveled gives you. Not a smoother path, but a stronger stride. And maybe that's what you're realizing too. That the thing you've been fighting against was never the enemy. It was the invitation, the unpaid bill, the broken trust, the silence in your relationship, the emptiness in your work. Every one of those moments wasn't there to break you. It was there to wake you. Because pain's only job is to get your attention. Once it has it, it doesn't need to scream anymore. That's the bridge moment. When you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? It's the shift. From resistance to reverence, from pain to participation, from growth as effort to growth as evolution. Here's the quiet truth most people miss. Discipline, at its core, is love. Love for your future self. Love for the people counting on you. Love for the life you haven't built yet, but can already see. You don't delay gratification because you like suffering. You do it because you believe in tomorrow. You don't take responsibility because you like being blamed. You do it because you trust your own power to create change. You don't tell yourself the truth because it's comfortable. You do it because lying would be a betrayal. And you don't balance because you're afraid to fall. You do it because you finally understand that peace lives in motion. That's not self-help, that's self-respect. So as we cross this bridge together, here's what I want you to hold on to. Every challenge you face is just another chance to practice love in disguise. Because when you walk the road less traveled, pain isn't the enemy. It's the proof that you're still alive, still learning, still becoming who you're meant to be. That's not suffering, that's sacred work. Now, What part of your life have you been resisting that might actually be trying to grow you? Because maybe the hardest part of your stories aren't barriers to your purpose. Maybe they are your purpose. When you reach that realization, when you stop fighting the difficulty and start partnering with it, that's when you finally step onto the real road less traveled. Not the one paved with certainty, but the one lit by awareness. Not the one where life gets easier, but the one where you get stronger. And that's where your next chapter begins. So, life is difficult. But that's not a punishment. It's the invitation. Every challenge you face is a classroom. Every moment of pain is a doorway to keep a kind of peace. Discipline isn't restriction. It's remembering who you're capable of being. Responsibility isn't about fault. It's about freedom. Truth isn't there to comfort you. It's there to set you free. And balance is the art of living with open hands. You don't need life to get easier. You just need to get stronger at living it. So, for the next 7 days, take 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no distractions. And sit somewhere quiet with a notebook or voice memo. And ask yourself one question. What's one thing I've been avoiding? And what's it trying to teach me? Then, instead of judging the answer, listen to it. You don't have to fix it. You just have to face it long enough to understand it. That's what discipline looks like in real life. Not punishment, not presence. Do this once a day for a week. Each time, you'll feel a little bit less fear and a little more freedom. Because the more familiar you get with your pain, the less power it has over you. Maybe the smallest change you make this week won't look like much. 10 quiet minutes, one honest answer, one decision to face what you've been running from. But what if that single moment, that pause, that breath, that tiny act of courage wasn't the end of something hard, but the beginning of who you're becoming? Because growth rarely announces itself. It doesn't roar, it whispers. It sounds like your own voice saying, I can do this. It feels like stillness after the storm. And sometimes it looks like you finally walking quietly down the road you used to avoid. So, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Kyle Mackie Podcast. If something in this episode spoke to you, if it made you pause, reflect, or see yourself a little differently, then my friends, that means you're already walking the road less traveled. If you want to keep learning and keep growing and keep building a life that actually feels true to you, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And remember, growth isn't a destination. It's a daily decision. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Mackie Podcast. If you got value from today's episode, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. Every listen helps this message reach more people, just like you.